Yo, what's up? Welcome back to Sexy's channel on YouTube. Yeah, I'm just gonna go straight to the point. So, I'm gonna talk about something that I think is very important, and it's not the conventional like argument you're gonna hear in regards to what I'm gonna talk about. So, basically, I'm just gonna go straight to the point. Like, the thing here is, if we run out of fuels, civilization is gonna collapse. I think that seems very obvious, but let me explain. Because, like, this is not the typical climate change argument that you see on schools and whatever. That we already know that argument has been school like forever, on school forever, right? And obviously, it's very useful. Like, that's super obvious that we need to make this transition because, like, it's really not great for the environment, right? And for climate change. But I think this is another very interesting point of this argument and of justifying the transition. So let's talk about the objective facts first. So the first one is obviously that fossil fuels are finite. Like oil, coal, and natural gas will eventually be exhausted. All these refers reserves will be eventually exhausted. Second is, I mean, the timeline is obviously debated. It could be like roughly in the next 100 to 300 years, like depending on the usage, the technology, and discoveries. I don't know, but like obviously they cannot sustain civilization indefinitely. Then number two is that modern high technology that you uh, that civilization currently uses is currently highly dependent on fossil fuels. So, for example, this thing that I'm using right now to record this, which is a computer, even this stuff, right? Like AI, current AI, like basically all high tech that you can think about is currently highly dependent on fossil fuels. Then, this is not only about the current high tech, it's also about current, like, the current economy, like, literally. And by the economy, I mean goods and services, like anything. Most of the goods and services in the high tech right now is currently highly dependent on fossil fuels. Then another thing that is very important is that renewables can, in principle, replace fossil fuels. So they can definitely replace fossil fuels. That's not science fiction. That's nothing that is not physically possible. Like that's in theory physically possible. Like that can be done. And then the transition is required eventually, right? Like, even if climate change wasn't a concern, which obviously is, and is the primary main concern in regards to this, even if that wasn't a concern, like, civilization still must replace fossil fuels before they run out. Because if the transition is not done in time, we will basically feel a super horrible collapse. I know that sounds crazy, but let me explain. So, like, basically, the thing is here. This thing is this. If we like lose our current goods and services and high tech base before this transition is complete, rebuilding from there will be super hard without the fossil fuels ladder. So let me explain. Like, obviously, this is assuming there's like a collapse scenario. So there's these things. If there was a collapse scenario for any reason whatsoever, like, I don't know, nuclear war that basically just creates an incredibly like horrible collapse, or any other thing that causes a collapse for current civilization, as I said, that will mean that we are in a collapse scenario between this transition time of getting to of getting rid of most fossil of being dependent dependent on fossil fuels. So that is one. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. It may happen, it may not. But that is one scenario. Then the other scenario is that collapse will happen no matter what. So this one that I just talked about is if a collapse scenario happens between that transition time of getting rid of fossil fuels. The other one is that, okay, in case we're lucky, and there's no collapse scenario between that transition time, well, whenever the deadline happens of that transition time, and whenever the deadline occurs and we haven't like made a transition, the collapse is gonna happen. So no matter what, it's like the sun. Like the sun is eventually gonna die. It's always gonna happen in a lot of years, like billions of years, but it will eventually happen. So in this case, let's talk about the second scenario, because the first scenario, which is a collapse during the between this transition time, like we don't know. There could be a nuclear war. There could be even AI. I don't know. There's a lot of ways, but I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm gonna talk about the second one, in case there's not like collapse scenario between the transition time. So basically, it's possible to build renewables with renewables because currently, as I said, most of the goods and services in high tech is built highly dependent on the fossil fuels. Ah, sorry. Now, in order to do this, because all I have been talking about is the collapse scenario, right? And I haven't even talked about why. Like, why will there be a collapse? Well, I think it just makes sense. If we are literally like dependent on a stuff, in this case, is fossil fuels, to create all these incredible goods and services and high technology, whenever we no longer have that stuff, the fossil fuels, then we are no longer going to be capable of creating these incredible goods and services and high tech. Whenever we are not able to create these incredible goods and services and high tech, we are not going to have it. We're going to run out of them. Like there's going to be a certain period of time in which we're still going to have these. It's like when you have a phone. When you have a phone, like I don't know, it lasts like 5 to 6 years, but after that time, it's really not that great. It's really not that useful. I think it's the same principle applies here. After like, I don't know, 10, 20 years, or I don't know, maybe even less than that, like the technology that we created um, for us to progress is no longer going to be that useful. It's no longer, maybe most of it is not going to even be useful at all. So that's going to be a problem because we don't have the high tech, like we literally don't have the technology and the goods and services that has made uh, humanity progress. So it's like if we were going backwards, and we don't want that. Like we don't want to go backwards. And if you really think about it, that's also very depressing because we were about to be a civilization going to space and settling on Mars, and we haven't done that, but we are about to do that. Um, and just imagine like getting rid of all this doesn't even allow us to create the current technology that we have. It's very hard. So it's gonna be super mega hyper hard. It's gonna be harder to do all those incredible stuff that we wanted to do. So it's like if the window of innovation was closed. Yeah, that's very depressing. We obviously don't want any of that. Um, but yeah, now, what would it take to solve this? Like, what would it take to make this transition, right? Because for the past like 9 minutes, I have been talking about, hey, there is this other argument in which it's not about climate change, but it's about literally civilization collapse if we don't make this transition. How can we solve it, right? How can we prevent this? Well, what we can do is we need like we need to understand first of all what are like the constituent parts and constituent elements for the production of goods and services in high technology, right? So currently, um, we need stuff like um, mining, heavy industry, global shipping, all of that stuff's like the primary things we need in order to create the current um, goods and services and technology, right? So, in order to create the current goods and services and technology, we need obviously the necessary materials. That's mostly mining and getting them and acquiring them. Have industry to manipulate these materials, and go from a material to a computer, set of materials to computers. Global shipping, obviously, to spread and distribute all of these, um, yeah, tools and goods and services and technology and all of that. As I already said, most of this is highly dependent on fossil fuels. So, what we will need to do, um, we'll basically need we will basically need to um, build kind of like a renewable ecosystem for all of these areas. So, for example, for mining, we will need, I don't know, build electric smelters, like electric mining vehicles, um, green hydrogen furnaces, like and those things. It's not like it's impossible. Like we already has already been like advancements on electric smelters, green hydrogen furnaces, electric mine vehicles, like etc. I'm just giving some examples, but obviously it hasn't been adapted like yet in a more widespread uh, scenario. So we will definitely need that. And, you know, at the end of the day, we will still need fossil fuels to create this renewable ecosystem. So this makes me think about like the typical argument of, hey, yeah, I mean, EV electric vehicles seems great, but I mean, at the end of the day, electric vehicles are done with fossil fuels. And yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, man. Like most high tech and goods and services are currently highly dependent on fossil fuels. And that means anything electric vehicles, computers, AI, whatever. So, I mean, it is true. We still like to create this renewable ecosystem. We will still need fossil fuels. Like, we will need fossil fuels to create this renewable ecosystem in order to make this renewable ecosystem replace the current fossil fuel ecosystem. And then, once we do that, obviously sounds easier said than done, but so I'm just simplifying. And once we do that, we're gonna be able to now uh, be highly dependent on this renewable ecosystem when creating and when doing the manufacturing and production of goods and services and high tech. So yeah, we definitely need to be working super hard. I guess like a practical advice into creating this renewable ecosystem. And yeah, we're still gonna need fossil fuels in order to create that ecosystem. But like if you really think about it, it's like a fossil fuel ladder. It's like if you're basically climbing up a mountain with a fossil fuel ladder, and once you get to the top, in this case, the top being, well, making the transition, then you throw away the ladder. You no longer need it. So yeah, we need to get there as soon as possible. So in practice, I guess the thing here is we need to really get that going on. Like there could also be like government intervention in this case, like for example, some form of taxation for the current fossil fuel ecosystem. But like there's gotta be two. I think there's gotta be two very powerful forces. Like there's gotta be the the super powerful force of um, the creation of this renewable ecosystem. I mean, I don't know, companies just creating better products that serve and this renewable ecosystem and making it, for example, cheaper, more efficient, whatever. Like basically making it so obvious for all these companies on the industry uh, to say, okay, I have this option, which is the fossil fuel option, and I have this other option, which is the renewable option. This one, the renewable one, seems cheaper, seems more efficient. Well, just makes sense, right? And that obviously super difficult, but it's not impossible. So that really needs to be um, improved, and there's gonna be a lot of work in towards that. And there's also obviously another way, which I mean, at the end of the day, both ways, if they work, like doing both things are just the best scenario, right? The other one is like I think about like government intervention, like basically we'll be putting some sort of taxation to the uh, fossil fuel ecosystem in order for all the entire industry and all these companies and that create the goods and services and the high technology just are like, okay, this is just so obvious that we're not gonna use this because there's a lot of tax. We're just gonna go straight with this. And but I mean, even for that, we need this incredible innovation in the and basically we need to build this renewable ecosystem because okay, yeah, the government has put a tax in here. Like let's say, I think it's a great. This is a very great, useful way to view this thing. So like basically put yourself in the shoes of everyone. So in this case, let's put ourselves in the shoes of all these companies that are creating these amazing goods and services and high technology products. Um, so if you're the company, you're like, okay, yeah, we have taxation here, so it's clearly much better in here. But I mean, the renewable ecosystem, we don't have any good alternative. Like the alternatives that we have don't work really well. Like it just makes sense. So in that case, there's need to be a supply of super great renewable ecosystem where companies and organizations or whatever just create like incredible great products that support this renewable ecosystem. Like I don't know, a very specific example might be super efficient electric mining vehicles or great like efficient electric smelters. I don't know, man. I'm really not that knowledgeable in all those areas, but it can be done. Um, and then once you have that, it's like okay, you can like it. I know it actually makes more sense to replace the fossil fuel ecosystem with this renewable ecosystem. So that's I think two major things that need to happen. So there's definitely need to be a lot of work put into these renewable ecosystem creation, and I think more practically, like advice will be just acquire the knowledge and set of skills that it's gonna like the necessary knowledge and skills to create this um, renewable ecosystem. So that's engineering, physics, chemistry, all of these super important areas and uh, sources of knowledge and skills that are available and that actually can be leveraged to create this ecosystem, right? So yeah, I think that's the thing. Like this is not um, like the conventional climate change advice, and I think it's a very interesting thing because there are some people that really don't care that long. Like I'm gonna give it. I think this is gonna be a great example. Let's talk about plastics, right? So there's obviously people that care about products that are that don't have any plastic at all, whatever, because of climate change, right? But there's also a lot of people that don't give a shit about that. like they don't give a shit about the climate change. And in the case of plastic, what they do give a shit about is their health. So we know that plastic is bad for climate change or whatever, but we also know that plastic is very bad for your health in long term. So there's like this very weird but great um, team up of these people that hate, like, don't want a plastic for climate change, and these people that really don't care about the climate change, but they do care about their health, and it's like boom, right? Both are on like the same page, which is get rid of the plastic, replace it. And I think it's a similar. I think it's a similar situation here because there's a lot of people that really don't care about climate change, but I mean, there's people that do may care about. Hey, if civilization collapses, that seems very scary. So in this case, it's like kind of these two main arguments, which is these two main arguments to transition from fossil fuels to renewables as soon as possible. Which is, hey, I mean, yeah, this is super bad for the environment, climate change, but this is also super bad for civilization in general. Like, if we don't do this, we're eventually going to collapse. Or, yeah, I mean, there's this also very important distinction that I forgot to mention, and that is that civilization is very like resilient. Like right now, the the I'm reading a book that actually sparked this like idea that I'm talking about right now, which is called "What We Owe the Future." It basically talks about, hey, um, civilization has come a long way. We have made incredible progress. There's still, but there's still a long way to go, and there's still a lot of incredible progress to do, and a lot of things for humanity just to continue flourishing and existing and progressing. And there's some parts of the book where it says, hey, in order to humanity to keep going, we need to also take into account what things will prevent from humanity to keep going, and that's obviously risks like existential risks and risk of collapse. And it basically argues, man, even if a lot of super horrible things will happen, like I don't, for example, a nuclear war, humanity would completely go extinct. There will be still people around, and it will be very likely that they will uh, rebuild a lot of stuff, and just it just proves that humanity is very resilient. So basically, how this affects what I have been saying for the past like 22 minutes is that maybe, and this is like actually I think the most likely scenario is that humanity, like in civilization, is not going to collapse uh, because they didn't make the transition to fossil fuels. And the reason why that is because they are just gonna see that there's an incredible amount of urgency. Like basically, while fossil fuels might run out in 200 years, civilization will feel the scarcity much earlier. Like I don't know, maybe 100 years. They'll just accelerate and pull all their energy to the shift. So obviously that's the worst case scenario. That we don't want that. Um, it's like if you have homework and the homework is due to 11 p.m. and you do it like 5 minutes. you start to do that. You start doing it at 10:55 p.m. Like we don't want that. So what will be the best scenario will be to do your homework and to do the homework at 2 p.m. or something. So yeah. So even if we still like don't do anything, like I think the most likely thing is that civilization is just gonna feel the scarcity to do so, because you're gonna be like, man, these we're really running out of fuels, and if we don't do this collapse is gonna happen. We need to go all in on this. Obviously, that's not what we want. What we want is like literally from the moment I'm recording right now, just put all our energy. Well, not all our energy, because a lot of our energy right now is in a lot of things, but like really work super hard on just accelerating this transition, right? And yeah, I mean, the most likely scenario I think is that we will eventually um, feel the scarcity much earlier to make the transition. and that's the most likely scenario in the um, scenario of humanity doing nothing. Now, we still have a lot of hope because we are actually doing something. But as I said, I mean, we're doing something, but as I said in the beginning, most of the production and manufacturing of goods and services and high technology and anything basically is highly dependent on fossil fuels. So there's still a long way to go, still a long way, you know, a lot of hard work to do in order to make this transition. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting. This other type of argument that is like another argument apart from the typical climate change one, which is man, civilization might really collapse, and this is very scary. Yeah, I mean, running out of fuels doesn't directly equal to extinction, but a collapse scenario will prevent recovery, which in practice makes it as dangerous as extinction in the long run. Because like you just can't recover. Like how the present that will be like, yeah, it's not great. So I think it's a very interesting set of ideas just to think about and to really remind ourselves of the importance of making this transition beyond climate change purposes and environmental purposes, which are obvious. Um, so yeah, we gotta really work very hard towards that, and yeah, I think that was very interesting. Peace out.